Good morning, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Sunnyboy. You Pistons should they call me Bukchutungak, which means Little Mr. Pincher. So if anybody falls asleep on me while I'm sharing the historical events that influenced the Alaskan Native people, I'll go through the line and pinch you to wake you up. Just kidding. We'll start off in a good way. And I like to do this with prayer first so that we'll be directed in a good way to share these things that affected, influenced our Alaskan Native people many years. Father God, we just come to the throne of your glory, and I ask you to pour out your healing waterfall upon all the people that are present here and all our families wherever they are, and all to all the people that have this coronavirus illness. Pour out your healing waterfall upon each and every one of us today. Give us the wisdom and understanding to teach each other the truth about things that influence our Alaskan Native people throughout the years, so that when we understand, we'll better understand ourselves and be able to help our families and people to heal throughout the Alaska, state of Alaska. And I just ask you to bless everyone here in the circle. In your son Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Liz.
Okay. I have to write down the things that happened in Alaska. And as I go through, if you have something in your community that related to some of the things I'm going to be talking about, just at the end, if you remember anything, just share it with us, because I'm part of the group that does blanket exercise, and a lot of these things are mentioned in that blanket exercise. This is the sharing I'm gonna do. It was done by one of our people that we trained with over the years. Elizabeth Rose Cookie. Cookie was her nickname, and she was part of our team as we studied about things that affected our people in Alaska. So that was her assignment, and she brought that back to our group in our trainings. And this is a lot of the things that she shared. It helped us to understand why we acted the way we did, or why our families were in the situation they're in. When we understood these things, it was easier for us to talk about them and hear through some of the experiences we went through. So the first part of thing I'm going to be talking about is the 1874 division of religions. The religions were divided to be sent to Alaska to different locations, and it's like I'm from the Yukon. Upriver, Holy Cross, they're predominantly Catholic, Russian Orthodox, predominantly Russian Mission, predominantly Russian Orthodox. Pilot Station was divided in half. Half of the village was Catholic, half of the village was Russian Orthodox. Downriver Mountain Village, again, there was Russian Orthodox, Catholics. There was some other religion there. I forgot the name of it, but there were three religions in that community, and all over Alaska. That's what they brought in the different church organizations, different religions. And in the beginning, early on, what we used to hear as even young people, each of those religions told their people that they baptized and brought them to their churches. That church, there was a division among, even in communities, even in families. When we talked about those things, we found out that even within our own families, there were divisions. My own family, we have Catholics, Russian Orthodox, Moravians, Pentecostal, and what we heard early on when we were younger was that we were told not to associate with other religions, that sometimes even their teachings told us that that wasn't the right religion. So in that way, there was divisions even in families through religion. And unfortunately, the leaders of some of those religions were not right for our people, because they did a lot of abusive behaviors, even sexual abuse among their people. And so that created a lot of hard feelings among our people and people that were affected that way. And we're starting to address those things and confront the church leaders relating to those kinds of behaviors and things that went on with our people early on. Even they created, those religions also created boarding schools, where a lot of our Native people were brought to boarding schools and went to school, but worked hard to keep up that mission or that boarding school, help out in that way. And on top of that, there was those abuses that happened in the different church religions. And in 1860, the canneries came on, and we were told that a lot of our Native, from Alaska, a lot of our Native men left their families to go to canneries so they could some money to bring home to their families later on. But that also created division from the families. The women had to take charge in the home, keep their homes with the help of even young boys, try to keep the home, warm, or and a lot of times they didn't hear from their partners who were in the canneries that were taken away from the community, the village, to go to canneries. So that was another division that was there through canneries. In 1900s, we hear about the Great Death, and many of us recognize, because it happened within our families. A lot of things that happened in that Great Death. There were smallpox, measles, chicken pox, and then there was the big gnome flu epidemic that killed 60% of the people, and that died in the communities. And when they brought in the medications, like the doc team that brought in the medications, it wasn't directed for our Native people. It was directed for non-Native people. So medication, even the medications, we didn't have those available. I mean, our people and the Native people didn't have that available to them, because a lot of them died in those epidemics that were brought in by different sailors or other people that brought those sicknesses and epidemics to our villages and to our communities, and that took away a lot of our people. When we went through this training, after we went through this training, we had to go home and tell the story, some of the story to our families. And because we were affected in that training also because some of our family members had died through some of the measles that we went through, smallpox, some of those things, because we didn't have medications in our small villages. And a lot of times these epidemics killed off many of our people. When one of our members went home after that training, after we heard some of these things, we had to share some of that with people, our people. And one young man asked his dad, do you remember that great death that happened in our area? I understand there were a lot of deaths when that happened. And the father got angry with the young man and told him, it's part of the past. We don't talk about those things. It's gone. We don't have it today. The second time later on, the young man asked again his dad, I'd like to know what happened in our area during the time of the Great Death. And the father said, well, it's a long time. It happened a long time ago. And, we don't need to bring it up. So people kept silent with a lot of those things that happened to a lot of our people. And the third time, that young man asked his dad, and that's the time our father broke down. And for the first time, he cried, and the son was surprised that happened. And the father said he was one of the young men with another young man that buried their whole village because of the great death that happened in their area. So these kinds of things we learned about, and a lot of times when we know the history of our people and what happened, we can understand. If we allow our people to talk about some of these things, we can understand even the behavior of our parents or, uncles and aunts, their behaviors. They might be hard, they might be abusive. Maybe they drink all the time. Because of a lot of these things that were introduced to our people, that's what happened to many of our people. Alcohol abuse came into many villages because they didn't want to feel the things they went through with some of things that happened in their communities. The division in the cannery time, the women, that were left behind with children because their dad was away in the cannery. A lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of helplessness sometimes. Those are things that they start to talk about. And as we went through these trainings and we learned about these histories, how they influenced our Alaskan Native people, we always had elders in our trainings. And my Papa Peter Jacob always told us, it's time to hear the stories of our people. And he would keep telling us it's time to hear the stories of our people, because he told some of the stories as he listened. even some of the elders that were with us, first time they talked about experiences they went through when they were young children with their parents. You know, in hearing this history, brought back a lot of the pain that they had gone through, and they try to forget about it. They didn't talk about it, or it's part of the past. We don't talk about that. Just like that young man heard his dad talking about the first time that he and another young man buried the whole village. So those kinds of pain they carried, never given the permission to talk about those experiences before. So that young man, when he came back to our next training, that's what he talked about. And it helped us to understand what happened to our people. What happened? Why did some of our people act the way they did? You know, knowing the history, knowing the understanding what really happened helped us to understand some of the behaviors of our people, some of the behaviors of our mom and dad, you know. So when we know something happened, that's what my Appa always told us. It's time to hear the stories of our people, because when they start talking about their experiences and what really happened to them, they're talking about their feelings, their pain, their hurt. They became orphans, they became alone, maybe with another person, because they had to do things like that. The father of that young man that told the story, they were the only ones left to bury a whole village. So things like this, it was a good tool, historical events that influenced our Alaskan Native people. It was a good tool to help us to understand our grandparents, our parents, and why they behaved the way they did. Because they went through a lot of pain, but they were never given permission to talk about their experience. It was too painful. So that's why they buried it. But sometimes when we don't talk about things, we act out. And unfortunately, closest to us, we act out to those people, our children, our grandchildren. And so that's why when my Appa found that out, my grandfather, when he found that out, he said, it's time to hear the stories of our people so that we'll heal from within and be able to share and talk about our personal experiences. So that's the thing that happened in that area. And then in 1900s, the gold rush in Nome. So that again, that gold rush brought in a lot of people, not from Alaska, maybe from outside. Different people came into the Nome area because of the gold rush, and a lot of things, a lot of problems were created with that, with the Native families or other people because of the gold rush, the greed or whatever they went through in that gold rush area. In 1912, there was that mine volcano, and I have to look it up. The tidal wave that happened that killed many people in that area. The whole villages were, the tidal wave wiped out some of the villages. And so some of the people that were remaining had to relocate to other places to protect their families and protect themselves from those things that the tidal waves and the volcano that happened in that area. So there were relocations that happened. 1924, Native people became U.S. citizens. And the stories we hear is that a lot of our people weren't even told that they were going to become U.S. citizens. They didn't know what that meant, but in 1924, that's what happened to our Native people, is that they became U.S. Citizens. And then in 1967, we heard about the Bristol Bay fishermen's strike. When people go to strike, the work session stops for a while. People don't get paid for their needs. A lot of people that were sent to those fishing areas, they didn't have anything to bring home to their families because of maybe that strike went on so long, and it affected the people that were fishing, and some of them had nothing to bring home to their families. A lot of these things we talk about, a lot of them, because of what happened, they all created division among families, among communities, among villages. The divisions that happened. In 1917, there was the Malihut School because of all the Great Death experiences. A lot of children became orphans and they had to be put in boarding schools. And some of the boarding school experiences were hardship among those people that were in those boarding schools. Some were physically abused, some were sexually abused, some were, they didn't see their parents. They didn't have no place to go home to because their parents maybe died in the Great Death. So a lot of things that were carried on by people because of things that happened in these events that have influenced our Alaskan Native people. Malihut schools, talked about bringing the schools back to the villages, back to the communities. Instead of taking our children and dividing us again, bring the schools back to the villages so that children will be there with their parents. Because of the division and even the boarding schools experiences that created division among the children and grandparents, parents, and the children, and that created a lot of hardship among the people that were left behind without the children. Grandmas that used to talk to their children early in the morning, instruct them to be good to their peers, to be kind to their peers. If somebody picks on you, get away from that situation. Don't stay there and create more problems. Get away from the situation. Those kinds of personal teachings when their children were taken away. A lot of hardship with the elders, the moms and dads, the uncles and aunts, because even some places, most of the children were taken away from their homes and brought to schools, or they went away for school. And a lot of times when they came home, because they were punished for speaking their language in the school they went to, and they came home, they spoke nothing but English, and they couldn't communicate properly with their parents or their grandparents because they were punished for speaking their native tongue So they couldn't do that even when they went home. And again, because of that separation away from their families, you know, and they changed the way they dressed or their hairs were cut off. Cut off, and those kinds of changes brought some feelings both to the parents, grandparents, and even to the young people that were taken away to the schools, away from their homes. So there's that division. Always a lot of these things that happened in our history was to create division among our people, so that because the thing is that the people wanted a lot of the land, a lot of the things that land provided for the people, the fur, the gold, mines, everything. Those were the things that the non-natives were after. The oil in Alaska, the division among great division among people. If you take the children away from their grandparents, it's almost like some people talk about it like the killing spirit. And that's hard to talk about sometimes when we go through that, when we go through those kinds of experience. People that have gone through sexual abuse, that's stripping the spirit of that person, that young person. Everybody just stand up right now where you're at. Brush off things that I've talked about so far. Some people might get, their throat might get tight because of some things I'm talking about right now. Just stand up, brush yourself off right now. Drink some water. I know that it's early in the morning that we're talking about these, but that's part of our history that we need to know. As part of our history, what happened to a lot of our people. And sometimes we need to share for some of our people because they died through these experiences, and we need to share their pain so that we won't carry it on to the next generation. Just get up and brush yourself up, take a little fresh air right now, go out there, brush yourself up, come back, drink water, and I'll continue.
Thank you, Liz. So right now, since we're gonna take this little break, I'm gonna switch you to a different phone so the volume could be louder.
Okay.
So I'm gonna hang up on this phone and call you from the office phone.
Oh, okay.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, bye-bye.
Turn my phone off too?
Yeah, turn your phone off. I'm gonna call you from the office phone.
Okay.
Okay, all right, bye.
Hello?
Hi.
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay.
Are the people coming back?
I think they're still here. I don't know if they got up or done anything.
Okay.
But thank you guys. Liz is back on the louder phone.
Are you guys back?
Yes.
Okay.
I can hear you guys, yes.
Okay.
Do you hear them? They're here.
Okay. Okay. I know that sometimes when we go through these things, sometimes it brings the heaviness with ourselves too. So we need to pay attention to that and, take care of ourselves, brush it off, drink water, and just take this as information that's needed for us to help our people wherever, whatever they're going through. We'll understand better what our grandparents went through, what our parents went through, and even us, what we went through. When we know this history, we recognize where we might have been stuck, and we need to start talking about that experience so that it won't be an interference for us to do the work that we need to do to help our people, to help our children, to help our parents and our grandparents, because they went through a lot of things throughout this history, throughout these years, with things that were the sicknesses and other things that happened to our communities and our people. And in understanding that, it'll be easier to work with people. It'll be easier to understand why they behave the way they do, or the alcohol abuse or other things that happen to our Native people. It's better to understand that and then to work through it for ourselves so that there won't be interferences for us to best help our people. Sometimes I've talked about how to take care of ourselves, in learning about this history. We need other ways to learn how to deal with it ourselves, and so that we can best help our people to heal through some of their experiences. I always appreciated Peter Jacob, when he says it's time to hear the stories of our people all the way through, so that they'll heal from within and be okay with themselves. So the next thing, Molly, the schools were brought back to the villages so that children don't have to fly out from their community and go to school someplace else. They're with their families. And a lot of them, when that happened, a lot of them started to do better in schools because they're with their families. And they're there, and so they're able to do work better because they're with their own families. 1971 ANTHC, Marine Mammals Protection Act. Okay, ANTHC, I know just a little bit about ANTHC, but there was a lot of things that happened in that period where a lot of our people, I know that when Cookie talked about that with a lot of information that I personally don't have. When she talked about that, one of our members talked about what happened in his own village where there was lots of things brought into the communities about where to hunt, license to hunt, division of lands where you don't hunt here, you hunt over there, where before in Alaska, people honored everybody that hunted anywhere they needed to hunt for food and survival things. But when this came about, there were a lot of regulations put into where people can hunt and how much you can bring home and what you couldn't bring home. A lot of the things that happened in this period created divisions of communities. You know, some people lost their hunting areas because that was these acts took away a lot of loss put into when people went out hunting. When that was talked about, one of our members said in the community, one of their people, the fishing game took away the gun of that person and the game that he got, and when he got home, he had nothing to bring home. And then they were going to pick up that person to put him in jail because he hunted out of season. When that happened, the whole community brought in their game, and same thing like that person, they took away his ducks and geese that he caught, and they took away his gun. And when they found out that they were going to put him in jail, the whole community brought their the ducks and geese, and they said, "Put me in jail, put me in jail." And then those people, the Fish and Wildlife or whoever went into the community to pick up that guy, they were turned away. And that's how one community dealt with that situation, because it happened too many times after the ANTHC came into being. So there's lots of things that happened in communities or villages. People weren't free to go hunting anywhere they wanted to, because there were laws and things that the government brought into the laws, and things that they weren't allowed to hunt mammals or things. Where before Alaska became a state, we could hunt anywhere. People were free to go anywhere to go hunting and bring home food and supplies that their families needed. Later on, 1972, ANTHC came into being. Fishermen's fish permits, license for hunting, fishing rights, lots of resources, land to state. That ANTHC again brought division among our people, our villages, our communities, the lands, everything that the land we use for hunting, for our shelters, our foods, our things that we need to survive, like throughout the winter, the things we collected before the winter came about, so that we'll have plenty supplies to provide for our orphans and our elders. A lot of those things we practiced, they were cut off because of the because of fishing permits, laws against hunting rights, division of even the fishing rights, license to commercial fish. A lot of those things, a lot of licenses where people weren't free to go out and go get their food so that they can collect it to help their people in their communities like they used to do before the welfare came about. They provided for people, they hunt for people, they bought plenty of supplies for the big winter dance where they were going to provide food for orphans and the old people and elders. So all those things, the welfare of the community was always taken care of before this happened, before the licenses came about. But so that was all taken away. Even the churches that came in early on, they told us no more dances, those are devil worship, or no more utilizing our traditional doctors, they're evil. They were ostracized from the villages because of the religions. The religions told the people those are not right things to use. Those are not, those are all evil. We don't need them. We have our own doctors. We provide you with our medicine. And so lots of those divisions and the things that were brought in, but doing away with the natural things that we were used to, and we utilized the land. We honored, we helped to protect the land where we're at, and we shared with everyone. But that whole thing created division again. Always with the thought of dividing our people. All these things that happen to these things that happen in Alaska, always to create division. When we take the children away from families, that will create division. The grandmothers and the grandfathers, the parents will lose their roles and rules within the home. All of these things in any way to create division because of all the natural resources that we have in Alaska, the oil, the gold, the coal. Now they're working on the pepper mine in Bristol Bay. All of those things, they were after all of those things that were naturally respected by our people. Because they were given to us by the Creator to take care of. So everything that we have, and that we need, was always provided by the Creator, and that's where the dances also, their songs of prayer, songs of thanksgiving, prayers of rejoicing, because we'll be able to provide for all people, even our orphans and our elders and people that are in need, because we gathered not only for ourselves, but to provide for everybody in the community. Always with that thought, always with helping the welfare of the community is the way our people had lived before. They took care of their people. Even someone that has abused, the person was corrected, like our elders talked about, corrected with love, talked to, instructed, and the whole community know what happened to a person, and the way they're going to correct or assign that person to work off their offense to a family. And when that's completed, the family will say, yes, this person has worked through the thing that was hurtful to our family, and we thank the person. Always with correction and love and care for people. All that was divided with all these experiences and things that influenced our Alaskan Native people. Okay, the last part, I think it's just the last part. 1973 sobriety movement. Some of that happened in late 70s also. Many people were starting to get sober. Many people were starting to address things that happened within their families or within their communities. the loss of a lot of our children when they were brought to boarding schools. Maybe they died in boarding schools. And sometimes the children never went home to their families, even in summertime. They worked through the summertime to keep the mission or the boarding school going. So the separation of our children, the separation of our men when they went to cannery. A lot of these things, everything that happened in this period was there to create division among families, division from our children to our from our grandparents and our parents. Educate the children, you know, so they'll know how to get a job. Never addressing what's really going on with the spirit of the child or the feelings that they go through. So a lot of these things that happen throughout the years, this thing that Cookie brought to our attention, when we went through it and studied it and personalized it, it helped us to deal with our own situation, because for many of us, we just got on sobriety movement for many of us, because many of us got into alcohol and drugs like after school, because that's for me, when I went home, some of my family was already into alcohol abuse, and that's what I saw, and that's what drove me to my own addiction to alcohol. So then when we went through this study, we understood why some of us acted out in alcoholism, because there was a lot of things that our parents went through, our grandparents went through, but they had never been given permission to talk about their experiences. And sometimes we understood why our dad acted the way he did, or why our mom acted out the way they did. In understanding that in our sobriety, it was easier to go within our families, to help our families also. When we knew what really happened to our people, what really happened to our parents, what really happened to our grandparents, and what really happened to us. So there was a lot of alcohol abuse. Survivors, a lot of them, many of our young people, their parents passed away, maybe their grandparents passed away while they were gone into boarding schools. And so sometimes when they went home, sometimes some of these children were lost because they didn't know where to go. So sometimes they try to fit in with their uncles and aunts and cousins' place. And sometimes because the families are already struggling, you know, for a person to go to them, that's a hardship, that's creating hardship within the family. So those are some of the things that people went through. Our education, we lost our language. We didn't talk about. We didn't know how to talk to our parents anymore because we lost our native tongue, forgot about it, or we were punished to we were punished in school for speaking our language. We weren't allowed to speak our language. The loss of spirituality, that part, religions are man-made, and each of those religions that were brought in from outside of the Alaska Native communities, many of those religions, that's why there was division among the religions that came into Alaska also. Each of those religions told within my family, they told us not to go to that church. That's not a true church. You know, those kinds of teachings, always creating division among families. You know, the abusive behaviors today of our people, because of not the instructions we were taught. We didn't know where to turn, especially after having been in a boarding school for a long time, to go out, and all the teachings, we were taken away from the natural teachings of our grandparents and our parents that led the Native life cycle. We weren't taught different things we needed to do in order to fit in the children's area, the toddlers area, the teen area, the couples area, and grandparents area, the natural things that we needed to know from the time we were children growing up. We didn't have that anymore. There was a period when many of us were taken away and brought into boarding schools when we were supposed to learn how to take care of our brothers and sisters, and how to prepare ourselves to get into a relationship and get married. That teaching that we're supposed to have, we didn't have it. Our teachers were our instructors were the teachers or the people in charge of those boarding schools. And unfortunately, sometimes there were some abusive leaders in the boarding schools that we went to. So a lot of behaviors and attitudes we had, and we carry that on. And that's the way we parent, because of the abusive thing that we watched a parent. You know, the people that replaced our parents, our grandparents, were abusive people, and that's what some of the things I learned, you know, in my parenting that weren't right. So many of these things we had to learn about them and talk about them and bring them home to help our families to heal through their own experiences too. When we've done that, when we've dealt with our own issues or our own alcoholism or our own behavior, abusive behavior, attitude, and things that weren't right for us, when we start to address them as the team got into sobriety and helping ourselves to recover even from some of the experiences that we went through in a relationship or in our raising of our children, we had to have our elders in our trainings to help us to be on the right track again. Because some of us didn't know how to be in a healthy relationship or how to raise our children. And we make a lot of mistakes. And so in learning about this history, it prepared us better to invite our elders into our teachings, into our classrooms, into our into our personal education. And so in that way, we found ways to better ourselves. And when we better ourselves, it's easier to talk to other people. How to take care of ourselves so we can be best teachers to other people, our children and other people, other people that need help. We had to learn our history first and talk about what really happened. And then to start looking at not only the problems of our parents, but their strengths, their personal strengths and personal ways of how they raised us children, and to be able to forgive some of our own relatives with our sobriety. And then 1980, the Great Society, telephones and TVs came into villages. And that was something else. And again, another distraction, the radios and TVs, another way to, sometimes another way to get us away from participating and being part of the family, because the TV looks better than what we're going through in our homes. So that's another thing that happened to telephones in the villages. We used to have one phone in the whole community. And so that came into being. And then 1990, 91, oil spill in here in our area, the cleanup and the oil spill and the cleanup in our area. Again, that destruction of our rivers and our waters. So these are the things that we need to look at and learn about in order to start helping ourselves and to help our families to heal through some of those experiences. And as I went through, I imagined when I talked about some of these things, there were feelings within some of you, and sometimes the feelings that you're going through, write them down. One of the ways that my Appa told the people, the students, you guys can write down your feelings, write down what's going on with you, what's happening within you, what's happening because of what you heard. Maybe that's the area that you need to work on, So when all these things that I just said were shared and talked about along with our elders, we taught not only ourselves, we included our elders, because a lot of them went through the experiences but never were given permission to talk about those experiences. So they helped us to heal through we helped them to heal through their experiences, and they helped us to heal through our own things that we were going through. So that's how far this here, the history of the 100-year history of things that influenced our Alaskan Native people. In knowing this history and being able to talk about some experiences for yourself or within your families, it's like you're opening the person to start talking about that experience and to let it go. we need to let go of some of these experiences in order to best help ourselves and help other people so that we can tell the truth in sharing the history. Why things happened with our people the way they happened. And when we included our elders in these kinds of trainings, they're very grateful because we gave them permission to talk about their experiences. And what they shared was helpful to us in the trainings. So that's how far this presentation I have. If you have any questions or additions to things that I went through, please be free to comment, share something of what you might have heard or what you have gone through with this historical events that affected and that influenced our Alaskan Native people. And then with this circle presentation right now, I know that some of it might have been hard to hear. Some of it, maybe you recognize something within your family. And if you understand that, write it down, do a little story on it and share it with someone or share it within your families. The best way to heal ourselves through this experience is to start talking about it, start sharing it so that our people will understand what really happened to us and what really happened to our people. Any questions or comments from anyone?